On August 15, 1977, at 11:16 p.m. Eastern Time, a radio telescope in Ohio detected a signal from space that lasted 72 seconds. It was so unusual, so precisely structured, and so powerful that the astronomer reviewing the data circled it on the printout and wrote one word in the margin. Wow. That signal has never been detected again. It's never been explained. And despite nearly 50 years of technological advancement and hundreds of follow-up observations, we still don't know what caused it. But here's what we do know. The signal came from the direction of Sagittarius. It was transmitted on a frequency that any intelligent civilization would recognize as significant, and it contained patterns that some researchers believe encode mathematical and biological information. This isn't science fiction. This is documented fact. The data exists. The printout is real. You can see it yourself at the Ohio History Connection archives. What we're about to explore is the most credible candidate for non-human communication ever detected. Not because anyone proved it was aliens, but because after nearly 5 decades, no natural explanation has ever fit the evidence. This is the story of the WOW signal. In 1977, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence was still relatively new. NASA had conducted a few surveys. Some university researchers were scanning the skies. But most astronomers considered it fringe science, a waste of telescope time. One of the exceptions was Ohio State University's Big Ear Radio Observatory. Since 1973, the Big Ear had been conducting a systematic survey of the sky, listening for unusual radio signals that might indicate intelligent life. The telescope was massive, about the size of 3 football fields. It didn't move. Instead, it relied on Earth's rotation to slowly scan different portions of the sky as the planet turned. Any given point in space would be in the telescope's field of view for exactly 72 seconds before Earth's rotation carried it out of range. On August 15, 1977, the Big Ear was pointed toward the constellation Sagittarius when something extraordinary happened. At 11:16 p.m., the telescope detected a narrowband radio signal, meaning it was concentrated on a very specific frequency, not spread across a broad spectrum like natural radio sources. The signal was strong, very strong. It peaked at more than 30 times the background noise level. And then, after exactly 72 seconds, it was gone. The Big Ear didn't have real-time monitoring. The data was recorded on paper printouts that astronomers reviewed days later. On August 19th, a volunteer astronomer named Jerry Ehman was going through the printouts from the previous week when he saw it. The intensity values were printed in a grid. Most of the time, the numbers were low, 1s and 2s, representing normal background noise from space. But in one column, the numbers spiked dramatically. 6, E, Q, U, J, 5. The Big Ear used a coding system where intensity values above 9 were represented by letters. The sequence 6EQUJ5 meant the signal had peaked at an intensity of 30 times stronger than the background noise. Ehman grabbed a red pen, circled the sequence, and wrote, "Wow," in the margin. That's how it got its name. So, what exactly was this signal? Let's start with the frequency. The WOW signal was detected at 1420 megahertz. If you're not an astronomer, that number might not mean anything. But, to anyone searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, 1420 megahertz is the most important frequency in the universe. Here's why. Hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe. It's everywhere, in stars, in gas clouds, in the space between galaxies. And hydrogen emits a very specific radio frequency, 1420 megahertz, or a wavelength of 21 centimeters. In the 1950s, astronomers realized something important. If an intelligent civilization wanted to send a signal that other civilizations would recognize, they'd use the hydrogen line. It's universal. Any species that develops radio astronomy would discover it. It's like a cosmic calling card, a frequency that says, "We know you're listening here." The WOW signal was transmitted on that exact frequency. That's the first unusual thing. The second unusual thing is the signal's structure. It wasn't random noise. It wasn't a broadband burst. It was a clean, narrowband transmission that rose in intensity, peaked, and then faded. Exactly as you'd expect from a signal source moving across the telescope's field of view as Earth rotated. Natural radio sources don't behave this way. Pulsars emit regular pulses. Quasars vary over long periods. Solar flares are broadband. Satellites and Earth-based interference create patterns that repeat or show Doppler shifting. The WOW signal did none of these things. It appeared once, behaved exactly as a distant point source transmission should, and vanished. Now let's talk about what the signal might have contained. The famous printout shows 6EQUJ5, the intensity values over time. But some researchers have analyzed this sequence more deeply, looking for patterns that might encode information. One interpretation suggests that the sequence, when converted into different number systems, produces values close to 100. Not once, but multiple times through different mathematical approaches. Some see this as significant, 100 being a clean, round number that might indicate intentional structure. Others have proposed that the sequence could encode information about amino acids, the building blocks of proteins and life as we know it. Whether this interpretation holds up to rigorous analysis is debated, but the fact that researchers keep finding patterns suggests the signal wasn't just random noise. And then there's the coincidence that's hard to ignore. The signal peaked at the letter U in the sequence. U is the 21st letter of the English alphabet. The hydrogen line has a wavelength of 21 centimeters. The signal was transmitted on the frequency associated with that 21 centimeter wavelength. Is that meaningful? Maybe, maybe not. But it's the kind of detail that makes you wonder whether someone was leaving a calling card. Immediately after discovering the WOW signal, Jerry Ehman and the Big Ear team did what any good scientist would do. They looked for it again. The Big Ear continued scanning that same region of the sky for weeks, then months, then years. They found nothing. Other observatories joined the search. In the decades since 1977, astronomers have pointed some of the world's most powerful radio telescopes at the exact coordinates where the WOW signal originated. They've used more sensitive equipment. They've scanned broader frequency ranges. They've listened for hours, days, weeks. Nothing. The signal has never repeated. That's unusual. Most natural radio sources are either continuous or periodic. Pulsars pulse. Magnetars flare. Even random cosmic events tend to repeat eventually if you watch long enough. But the WOW signal appeared once and never again. So what could it have been? Over the years, astronomers have proposed several natural explanations. Let's go through them. Explanation 1. Earth-based interference. Maybe it was a plane, a satellite, or a radio transmitter on Earth that happened to be broadcasting on 1420 megahertz and created a false detection. Problem. The Big Ear had two receivers, called horns, that scanned the sky in parallel, offset by a few minutes. The WOW signal appeared in only one horn. If it were Earth-based interference, it should have appeared in both. Also, 1420 megahertz is a protected frequency. International agreements prohibit broadcasting on the hydrogen line specifically to avoid contaminating astronomical observations. While violations happen, A signal this strong and clean would have been detectable by other observatories if it were coming from Earth. Explanation 2. A satellite in the wrong orbit. In 2017, an astronomer named Antonio Paris proposed that the signal might have been caused by a comet, specifically comets 266P Christensen and 335 plus P Gibbs, which weren't discovered until after 1977, but would have been in that region of the sky at the time. The idea was that hydrogen clouds around comets can emit radio signals at 1420 MHz, and the WOW signal might have been a comet passing through the telescope's field of view. Problem: when astronomers tested this hypothesis by observing those comets with modern equipment, the radio emissions were far too weak and too different in structure to match the WOW signal. The hypothesis was tested and failed. Explanation 3. A natural astrophysical phenomenon we don't understand yet. This is the catch-all explanation. Maybe it was a neutron star doing something weird. Maybe it was an unknown type of cosmic event. Maybe it was a one-time occurrence from a source we'll never see again. Problem: this isn't really an explanation. It's saying, we don't know, but it's probably natural. Which is fine as a hypothesis, but it doesn't actually explain the signal's characteristics. So here's where we stand. After nearly 50 years, no natural explanation has adequately accounted for the WOW signal. That doesn't mean it was aliens. It means we don't know. The WOW signal is significant, not because anyone proved it was extraterrestrial communication. It's significant because it's the only radio signal ever detected that fits all the criteria we'd expect from an intelligent transmission, and has no confirmed natural explanation. Think about what would be required for a civilization to send a signal we could detect. First, they'd need to develop radio technology. That's not trivial, but it's not impossible. Humans did it in less than a century after the Industrial Revolution. Second, they'd need to aim a transmission toward us. That's harder. They'd need to know we're here, or they'd need to be broadcasting in all directions. Third, they'd need to choose a frequency we'd be listening to. The hydrogen line at 1420 MHz is the obvious choice. It's the universal frequency any radio-capable civilization would discover. Fourth, they'd need to make the signal strong enough to cross interstellar distances. That requires significant power, but it's achievable with technology that's not far beyond our own. The WOW signal checks all those boxes. Now, here's the problem with trying to detect a second signal. If the WOW signal was an intentional transmission from an intelligent source, it might have been a targeted beacon, broadcast once, aimed at our region of space, and then turned off. The civilization might have moved on to broadcasting toward other star systems. Or maybe they're waiting for a response. Alternatively, maybe it was a one-time transmission, a message in a bottle, sent once and never repeated. Or maybe Earth just happened to be in the right place at the right time to intercept a signal aimed somewhere else, like overhearing someone else's conversation. All of these scenarios would explain why the signal never repeated, but they're also unfalsifiable. If you can't reproduce the signal, you can't prove what it was. And if you can't prove what it was, mainstream science will default to probably natural. We just don't understand it yet. That's where the WOW signal sits, in limbo. Too strange to dismiss, too unrepeatable to confirm. Here's what we know for certain. On August 15, 1977, a radio telescope detected a narrowband signal from the direction of Sagittarius. The signal was transmitted on the hydrogen line, the frequency most associated with the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. It lasted exactly 72 seconds. It was strong, clean, and structured. And it has never been detected again despite decades of follow-up observations. Natural explanations have been proposed. None have held up to scrutiny. Does that mean it was aliens? No. It means we don't know. But here's why it matters. The WOW signal represents the best evidence we have that something unusual happened. It's not a blurry photo. It's not anecdotal testimony. It's hard data, recorded by a scientific instrument, reviewed by credentialed astronomers, and preserved in archives. If we're serious about searching for extraterrestrial intelligence, the WOW signal is the standard. It's what we're looking for. A clear, structured, narrowband transmission on a significant frequency, with no natural explanation. We found one. Once. In 1977. The question is, will we ever find another? The WOW signal remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in astronomy. For nearly 50 years, it's defied explanation. It's been studied, debated, and analyzed by some of the best minds in the field. And we're no closer to understanding what it was. Jerry Ehman, the astronomer who discovered it, spent the rest of his career saying he didn't know what it was. He never claimed it was aliens. He just said it was the most interesting thing he'd ever seen. In the next episode, we'll look at something else coming from that same region of space. Something that's happening right now. And the question we'll ask is, should these two events be connected? But for now, the WOW signal stands alone. A 72-second transmission from the stars. A message we received, but never answered.